Maybe
Here we are. We are live. Day number 329. We have a very special guest, a man who has lots of toys he's going to show you. Pierre Guidetti from Sennelier. Welcome, Pierre.
Bonjour. Hello. Bonjour. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, there's nobody else in the room. Nobody in this room either.
No one is there, but do you see? I don't see the people. Are people showing up already?
Oh, no. Nobody's going to show up today. No.
Okay. All right. So we just have a conversation, you and I, then.
Yeah. So I want to tell everybody that one of the reasons I want to have you on is because it's like being a kid in a candy store to go to your place. You have a warehouse in Northern California, which nobody ever gets to see because it's not open to the public. And I had the pleasure of going to your warehouse, and I was like a kid in a candy store. It's like I wanted to say, I want that, I want that, I want that. You know, it's just like papers and paints and panels and brushes and pastels and watercolors and everything. So I wanted to have you on today, and because you know so much about so much, you're an expert, you're an author, you do lectures, you lectured at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you've lectured in so many different places that I wanted to kind of talk about materials because they're so much a part of our life, and ask you questions and have you show us stuff. So that's what we're going to do today. Is that cool?
Yes, of course. I'm all ready, and it will be a little improvisation because, as you mentioned, I give regular lecture, and sometime in your platform like the Watercolor Live or Plein Air and all that, but also museum, art school, association, and all that. And today we're gonna try to get the little bits and pieces of all those different lectures, whether it's about Impressionism, about the history of paper, the history of watercolor, the invention of oil pastel. We can go and we'll have a little teaser of each.
But I want to show you something real quickly, all right?
Of course.
All of that is paint. All of that is paint. And it's all Sennelier.
All right.
And I might be lying just a little bit, but there's a lot of Sennelier in there.
Yeah.
And I know you guys love it when we have lots of tubes of paint. And by the way, I don't have it all out there. I have another cabinet filled with paint. And so I'm a paint junkie. I'm your favorite person.
Yes, and that's true. And most artists, so you have different kind of artists. It's true that there's some artists that are set on their way and they have a method and they learn to use certain product a certain way and they stick with that for the rest of their life. That's one genre. But many artists it's part of the process, the creating process is to experiment with materials. And that's where usually I come in and I try to inspire artists to experiment with new things, whether it's things that inspire them because they were used by masters like Monet or so forth, or Michelangelo, or is it to break the rules that you have and to discover new color, new texture, new things. And that's how, in my opinion, artists keep on creating. It's like a cook, a chef. You always.
I want to tell you something about that because I think that's really important. As you know, we just wrapped up Watercolor Live because you were a sponsor. We did Realism Live earlier in the year. We did Plein Air Live earlier in the year. We've just announced a new Plein Air Live, and a lot of people are going from one to the other, even though they are not maybe plein air painters or they might not be watercolorists.
Yep. And
they're getting informed in other things. And I will tell you, I'm working on a painting in the background, and I learned a technique from a watercolorist on Watercolor Live that I never knew about. And I contacted him. I said, to your knowledge, has anybody ever done this in oil? And he said, I've never heard of it. He says, I'm not sure it's possible. So I started experimenting and figuring it out. So actually the watercolor technique now applied to oil has given me a whole new attitude about things that I can do with my oil painting. So I think that I've got a little something for everybody in here, and I want to talk about it. But first, I know you have a book. I'd like you to show the book to us a little bit. I have it. I don't have it here, but it's in my office. Yeah, there you go. And how do people get that book?
Well, unfortunately, that book is sort of almost out of print. I think it's out of print, but they still circulate through, you can find it through eBay, Amazon, and all that. And I'm working on a second printing. But what's interesting about this book, of course, you can find it. It's called the Sennelier book. There's only one. The History in Color, and that's from Shen publication. But what's interesting, because that came about, and that will explain the reason why I want to talk about the book, not for you to buy the book. You can if you want, if you find it, but it's just because it's a good thread that explains. This book was actually, I didn't write it personally because I'm not a writer, but he was a friend of mine who is a great journalist and book writer, who saw one of my lecture. I think it was at CAA, College Art Education, with all the faculty of the best university and all that. And she was fascinated by the fact, the history, how much materials may have changed the world. And that was based on my series where I do a parallel between the art revolution and the industrial revolution. And it takes place in Paris in the middle of the 19th century.
Do you remember a time when you and I sat down and had lunch in Marin County? And what did I tell you I was going to do?
But, I remember very well, because you came and you were redoing the plein air magazine. So you were talking to me, wanted to have my input on my thing and how we can collaborate. And that's when we shared the idea of doing a plein air convention. I was referring to it as an impressionist convention, and you turned it into a plein air convention. And that was probably it was a couple years before the first plein air. So it must have been 10, 12 years ago.
Well, the plein air convention would be normally celebrating its 11th year this year, but it would have been the 10th convention. So that was over 10 years ago. At that meeting, you asked my advice on a couple of things. And one of the things I discovered in talking to you that I think is important is that your paint was the original paint of the Impressionists. And I always used to say to you, remember, I'd say, you should put a picture of Monet on your advertising, and you should talk about how you can still buy the original paint of the Impressionists. And you've done some of that since then. So I want to start there, because we have not even explained to a lot of people here what Sennelier is. So Sennelier is a paint company from Paris. That store is still there. I've been in that store many times. It's across the street from the Louvre, right?
Yeah. So this store, that's the Sennelier store. Like you said, it's still almost exactly the same today. In this one, you see there was horses at the time.
Hold it still so we can see it.
Hold on. It's
right in front of you, right there. Yeah. Now, Sennelier was the original, what they called color man for a lot of those artists, where he would grind the colors and provide the colors, yes?
Exactly. So what happened in the middle of the 19th century, as many people know, Paris was the capital of the fine art. People from all over the world will come and teach or study in Paris or show in Paris or visit and all that. And then it was at the same time that when the Impressionism broke through, from the Academy style, and Sennelier was right there. So Gustave Sennelier was an artist and a chemist, and he decided to have that store. And he started by making the paint, and his friends in particular were like Paul Cézanne, Pissarro, and then later Monet and Bonnard and all that. And basically, he put together his chemical. At the time, there was a lot of invention of new pigments, and he was part of that. So he was applying, his knowledge of the new colors And at the same time, those artists were looking for a new genre, and that's how the Impressionists. So when I teach, when I lecture in art school, I said, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the artist wanted to break free and wanted bold color, brilliant colors, they wanted paint in tube to go outside? Or is it the manufacturer, by putting paint inside tubes, which Sennelier was one of the first one, not the only one, discover new red, new bright blues and things that inspire the Impressionists to go off the old classic academy. So this is.
So do you remember? Do you know what some of the original colors were that the Impressionists were using?
Oh yes. So some of them, unfortunately, we cannot have anymore because they're either toxic or not light fast. But there is some that they still exist, and we still use the exact same formula. So I'm talking about like cadmium yellow, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, a lot of blues, or some reds. We are starting to do the new very bright red. Before, it was impossible to use. The blue were too expensive. It came from lapis lazuli. It cost a fortune. So it was kind of to make art more available with those bright colors. So yes, we have a few of those colors, and
I'm not so sure that people understand where paint comes from. You start telling them where paint comes from. I'm going to go get something. I'll be right back.
Okay, so paints, it comes from pigments first. So paint, talking about oil paint. So oil paint, first of all, it's pigments. So the pigment is a pure pigment. Yeah. So a lot, pigment, like in France, south of France, you have the ochre. That could be red ochre, yellow ochre from the south of France, which is actually
this is cadmium red light, number 1, PR 108.
Yeah, so this is actually come from the earth, and you mix it with, you refine the pigment, you put oil, and you ground it, and then you put a little bit of spices here and there to make it better, and it's basically ground by hand. I can show you a photo, for instance, here.
So so there were colors that were actually made out of berries and things like that. Yes.
Yes. Oh, there was a lot of things. Like there is like from bugs, even from cochenille. From cochenille, it was bugs from Mexico to make a red. You had the carmine.
That takes a lot of bugs to make a red.
You have the yellow, Naples yellow. The Naples yellows come from, Indian cows' urine that were stuffed with mangoes, and that would give that yellow thing. You had ink coming from the sea, from pulps, from pulp, pulpos. You had. But now, so what we did, we kept the real strong color that are non-toxic and light fast. And then the other of the original color, then we've developed now some synthetic color.
Will you explain what light fast means? Because there are people who might not know that term.
So light fast, it means when you do a painting, depending with age, the color may change.
Might fade.
So it depends. They could fade away. That it becomes lighter. Some other gets darker. If you look, that's why there is conservative. Like you could use some. You can look at some old Renoir, and it gets very, very, very dark. It's because the pigment darkens with time. So it's the shift of color with time. And what we do, and what's special about Sennelier is that we can go to the Louvre or to the Met or to the MoMA and look how our paint have aged in time. So it's very interesting, and we work very closely with museum conservators to see the evolution. And that's why we adapt with the time, because in the 19th century, Gustave Sennelier was talking to people like Monet, Cézanne, Pissarro, and then his son was talking to Picasso, to Dali, and all that. Then his grandson, and me, when I started, I also work with the biggest artists in the United States. So this feedback makes us adapt, evolve, improve all the time.
Now you have two colors that I never heard of that Richard Lindenberg introduced me to. And those two colors independently were hardly ever used, but when you used them together, they made the most luscious greens. And it was, I think you call it either Chinese red or Chinese yellow, which is a color only you have.
Yeah, so it's actually close enough. It's called Chinese orange.
Chinese orange.
Chinese orange was a color that, interesting. You know, at the beginning, when you would go, I'll show you the photo. When you would go, you see like this guy making the paint here. So that's how they used to make the paint. The artist like Cézanne would come, would come to the store that you saw and ask to prepare a special color. So we learn color mixing because there's two kinds of paint. There's the colors which are single pigment. That's easy. That comes from and then there is some blend. We don't want to make too many blends, but it's better when you blend the color in the factory, when you mix the dry pigment together instead of mixing, it's cleaner. And then we learn those blends. So one of those colors was inspired by Cézanne, who was keep on asking Gustave to make that color. So in the beginning of so when we redid the range in 1900, I think, we decided to call it, to make that color. And then it came out very popular with people like Matisse, Bonnard, you know, with the Fauvistes, because it was very unique color. And why Chinese orange, so I have to tell you a little secret, people try to figure it out, is because China, in the beginning of the 20th century, was very mysterious. It was the glory, the Chinese, with the emperor, and the culture of China was very intriguing. So it was kind of exotic. So he said, you know what? We'll call it Chinese orange. It has nothing to do with China. It was a cool. You're in marketing. You understand? It was just a marketing coup. You know.
Now the color that blends with, I think, is called blue gray, and I don't have a tube of that handy, but I keep the Chinese orange on my palette at all times. And when you mix that with that blue gray, it's really wonderful. What I want to kind of get into demoing and showing some, we're not going to do a painting, but we're going to show some materials because I think everybody'd like to see it. And I've asked Pierre to make sure he touches a little bit on watercolor, pastel, oil, and also the big thing that I'm really interested in right now, I've been painting with, that you got me excited about. It was Rose Franson, who was on Plein Air Live, who painted with both with her brushes and oils, but then she brought out oil sticks. And I want to learn more about oil sticks because I think they give you some freedom that you can't do with brushes. Yep. So let's start. Well, make sure that you talk about that. But first, go ahead. I'm going to put you on full screen now, Pierre.
Oh, my God. Ah! All right. So again, I want to clarify. I am not a teacher in a sense that I'm not teaching people how to paint, but I am working with art teachers, with museums, with great artists, and try to tell them about the usage of the materials. So I'm not going to show you how to paint, but show you some tricks, you know. So here, this is the Chinese orange, for instance. So I'm going to, do like this.
It's very transparent. And by the way, I like it almost better than a transparent yellow.
So this
Indian yellow.
These colors, it's very transparent, and you were saying with gray. So I'm gonna put I don't know the color that.
Well, I was thinking about the blue gray. It's kind of a light blue. What's nice about Pierre is he has every color made to man right there in his office.
So here I'm gonna show you with may not be the exact same blue gray. This one is azure blue, but it's very when you mix it together, it gives you that very
rich, very rich greens.
So, and that's the thing. The Chinese orange at the beginning, people didn't know what it was, and said, "Oh, but I don't use that color." Until some very famous painter that you know you can see the transparency and how it mixes and gives you that rich thing. So, what's the Chinese orange? So, some people like it. So, just let me tell you that Chinese orange was used by Cézanne to paint the earth around Montagne Sainte-Victoire in Aix-en-Provence, because he gave that earth tone, reddish earth tone. But really what people discovered here in this country is for mixing, blending. It's fantastic, like to make greens or to make background or to mix. So this is very, very special. I'm going to also show it to you with a brush. This is a brush that Eric likes, Max Ginsberg's brush. And that was the first impressionist brush, because we invented the ferrule. You see the ferrule here, and you can see photo of Renoir or Monet painting with this brush. So
now that ferrule is copper top, right?
Yeah. So you see how you do that. One of the color which is interesting.
What's the brand of that brush? That's
a Raphael. It's a Raphael. Is called Paris Classic.
And show the top, because they can spot it, because it's the only brush made with copper.
Yeah, it's made with copper, and you see that shape. It's called filbert. That was the first flat brush that was designed. Before, the brushes were only round, but in the 19th century, there was the invention of we're able to make metal ferrules, so that allowed to make it flat. Before, it was impossible. But and this is halfway between round and flat, was filbert. Usé bombé. It looks like a brush used. Usé bombé in French, it means, bulky and used.
Yeah.
And for Raphael, just to let you know, it's the oldest brush. They've been making brush since 1793.
Max Ginsberg called me. He was giving me some advice on my self-portrait. And he was telling me, he said, "Eric, you have to get this brush." He said, "This brush, the bristles in it move color so beautifully." So I immediately went out and bought them. They're not cheap, but they're really good.
So about that, it's interesting. The hair is different. The reason he's saying that, because most of other hog bristles are made with what they call, they are curve, they are interlocked. This is a triple boiled, so the hair are flat, and you have flags at the end of the tip. So
I understand they're hogs that only eat peanut butter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I want to interrupt just real quickly while you're moving on to the next thing, because we want to make sure we have plenty of time for everything. My name's Eric Rhoads. I'm publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazine. This is day number 329 since quarantines began. We've been here every day. Yesterday's winner of the easel brush clip is Robin Rogers Cloud from California. So congratulations to Robin. Today we're giving away a digital subscription, a one-year subscription to Plein Air magazine's digital edition. Plein Air's #1 selling art magazine in America, and the digital editions have 20% more content than the print. So most people have both. So that's what you win. And the way to win is to leave a comment. And please tell us where you're watching from. And if you're new today, just tell us that you're new. We'd like to know that. And then back to Pierre.
Yes. So here we're going to move off oil, because you want me to talk, about many other things. But I just want to show you one of my also very special color, which we are very known for our blue. Look at this cobalt blue. We have the purest cobalt blue. What you have to understand is each paint manufacturer choose their pigment. There is often not a standard in color. So it's very important. Don't expect from the name of a color from one brand to another. There is no standard. So each manufacturer have their own vibration, their own hue, their own depth. And so it's very important. Like the little story, I know very well the Sennelier family, which I'm considered family with them. And he was telling me, that was the kind of discussion in at dinner table between the grandfather, the son, the father, about, oh, what do you think of this color? Picasso likes it like this, but I really prefer it like that, and that's about how to choose. So it's very important to trust a brand that are able to provide you pure colors. So anyway, do you want to move on to other things?
Yeah, I want to talk about oil pastels.
Okay. All right. So, but so if you don't mind, if we do chronologically, there is something that happened because oil pastel, we invented it in the middle of 20th century. But there's something else we did before, which I want to show because it's a kind of a interesting story. Is in I think it was in 1899. There is Edgar Degas, the artist Degas, came to the store and said, "Oh, I love your paint, I love your colors, but now I want to do pastels because I want to go and paint the ballerinas, the dancer, and I cannot really carry oil." So he asked us, and I'll show you a photo, and he asked us to make pastels. And that's how we started making here. It's coming here. So look at this. So this is Degas. And you can see our color. Our pastels are exactly the colors is used. So this is the pastels, which, the most important, the best one I would recommend is the Paris collection. It's 120 colors. And look at this. Look at the depth of these colors. Look at this. Look at this. Pastel is the most pure colors. It's 100% pure pigment. Look at this.
Wow.
This is, people forget.
It vibrates.
So look up.
Wow. I don't have a set of pastels. That's beautiful.
So, it's for the little story. Sometimes when I demonstrate that in art school, people think I'm a genius artist.
Yes, you are. You're genius.
And they want to buy my painting. And I have to say, no, they're not for sale. But just to show you, it's like cooking. If you buy the beautiful tomatoes, heirloom, organic, you make the salad, it tastes good. It doesn't take a genius. So when you start with pure pigment, beautiful colors, trust me, it makes it much easier for you. So anyway, that was a little pastel story.
Well, what do you think I should do? You think there's enough interest I should do pastel live?
Yes, I think pastel. So proportionally, there is less pastelists than oil painter, acrylic, or watercolor. However, most artists sometime in their life use pastels because it's really go back to the basics. I mean, basically, we've been doing pastels for tens of thousands of years. You can argue that the cave painting in Lascaux or other places, it was pastels. So a lot of people, even though they were not trained in pastels, they're very curious. It's a very mysterious go. So I think, yes, not only you would have pastelists, but you would, based on what you said earlier, I think a lot of oil painters love to experiment with pastel. A lot of watercolorists love, and in some case you can mix, watercolor and pastels and things like that. So yes,
well, if I can get 300 people to say yes, I would do pastel live in the comments today, I will go to my meeting after this and push for it.
Yes. So, and if you decide to go forward with this, let me know. I'll be there. I'm very involved. I'm on the advisory board of Pastel Society in America. I've been working with them for almost 40 years. I was very young, and also I'm very involved with IAPS, International Pastel Society. In fact, I was the keynote speaker for their last event. And because so if you do that, I'll be happy to contribute and to help you to
All right.
Excite people with pastels.
Okay. Well, we want to make sure if we do it, we don't step on their toes. They have a wonderful conference they're going to do in June of 22. And we would not want to step on that. We want to be supportive of that. Okay. So talk to me about oil pastels, because that's something I'm curious about it. I went and bought a bunch of your oil pastels at the art store locally. And I started using them on top of my oil painting. And I'm curious about, will they eventually dry? Because they seem like they maintain their moisture pretty well.
So, all right. So let me tell you. So sorry, I know you want me to paint, and I will show you in a second, but I think that needs a little explanation. And I have a whole lecture just on the difference between oil pastel and oil sticks. So I'll try to be very brief and then show you a couple of things. But first of all, the fun story is about the creation of oil pastel. In 1947, in Paris, after the World War II, there was a sense of freedom, or and then there was this artist who came to the store and said, "Oh, I love your colors, your oil paint, but I want something that I don't want to use a brush. I don't want to have to mix with medium. I want to be free and to paint on anything, everything, on paper, canvas, cardboard, wood, metal, everything." And wow, and that was the son, Henri Sennelier, said, "This guy is crazy. We can't do that." And then another artist said, "He's a very important artist. You should try. It's worth it." So that artist was Picasso, and we created, and that's how we created oil pastels. So oil pastel, this is this is the oil pastel,
and they come in small and large.
Yeah, this is the larger one for the year, but this is the medium size. We have a small size, regular stick. I have some there, but this one is more photogenic. So there is the oil pastel. And then later, I was working with people like Frank Stella, with people like de Kooning and people like that. And because they were using this oil pastel on their sculpture, it was the origin of mixed media. And then we decided to also develop a new line. So that was in the 80s, of oil sticks. So there is a difference.
So what's the difference between an oil stick and an oil pastel?
So the oil pastel doesn't dry fully. Because it doesn't dry, it doesn't oxidize. So you can paint on everything. It will never crack. It will never peel off. So then it's very permanent. But when you do an oil pastels, he won't dry all the way deep. The surface will dry a little bit, but it will never totally dry. So people are self-conscious. They like to put glass and all that. So the advantage, you can work on everything, anything, over anything. And the challenge, it doesn't dry fully inside. But you have tricks to make it dry when you mix it with oil medium, or if you mix it with your paint, it will dry inside, but you never paint over an oil pastel. That's very important. So oil sticks, it's basically exactly like oil paint, but just on the same stick form. And this will dry. So when you use oil stick, you have to use all the proper preparation, gessoing, priming. You have to work on panels or canvas or linen.
Yeah. So that must be my mistake. I think I bought oil pastel thinking it was oil stick, because it was never going to dry. So I finally abandoned that painting. But that's probably what I was doing wrong. So can you show us real quickly? People are saying in the comments they want to see oil sticks and oil pastels.
So here, for instance, I'll show you here. I was just practicing earlier. So again, I'm going to show you the freedom. I'm not going to show you how to draw something, but you can. First of all, it's very gestural, so you can use your body. It's an extension of your arm, so there is no thing in between. There is no brush, no medium, no oil, nothing. You go straight. So it's very pleasant. And, you know, and you can do layers. You know, you can do layers like this. And then I'll take another color. And then you can really experiment. You know, do like this. And then, and you know, even if you are, I don't have to take a tool. Hold on.
So I've just discovered that I went and found my stuff, and I just discovered that I was using oil pastel, not oil sticks. So that's what my problem was. Now I got to go buy a whole new set.
So I know a lot of people do realism, you know, and that's okay. But even like Rose, for instance, or other people use that for background, because you can do very interesting effect. You see, you can mix, you can do a lot of fun because they.
So is that oil? What is that? Is that oil pastel or is that oil stick?
This one is oil pastel.
Okay.
And
now show us oil stick, because we're going to run out of time. We're at 35 minutes already.
Ah, all right.
I got to keep you on. I got to keep this train on track here.
So oil stick, but basically, you know, it's actually on here on live. Honestly, you won't see the difference. So it's, you know, there's not really a point to demonstrate it since we are out of time, because basically oil pastel and oil stick are very similar in the way you use it. It's just on what surface you're using them.
Okay, so I can put it over my oil paint, and then are they archival?
Yes, oh, absolutely. No, all the product we do, we are fully archival. The oil pastel are very archival as well. And if you have oil pastel over your paint, don't throw away your painting. You can remix or put a little medium, and then it would cure inside the oil paint. So don't throw away your painting. But next time, do.
Well, there's another reason to throw it away.
Yeah, but Rose would be the best. If you want to see real oil stick used, I would defer to Rose, and I think she made a video with you, so I would highly recommend you check her out. She's fantastic. You know, I met her it's just, she's a fantastic lady, a good person as well. So how much time do we have, because we wanted to talk about watercolor.
25 minutes.
So watercolor, let me show you. So watercolor, something interesting about watercolors, and I have, I was talking to a few people at your watercolor live, and it was very interesting. We have very good conversation. So our watercolors was first, you have to imagine, you know, actually I just wrote an article about that, how watercolors crossed the channel in the 19th century. The watercolor was invented in England for people like Turner, Cotman, Reeve, and all that. And then, but he was a little subdued, a little, you know, not very bright or luminous color, because England is sort of like that a little bit. So then when he crossed the channel, the Impressionists started to discover these watercolors, but since they were so into those bright, luminous, bold color, we made a watercolor like that. And that became the French style watercolor. And we use honey, and the honey makes it very luscious, very bright, luminous, and transparent. And
you use honey as a binder to keep it together?
Yes. So watercolor is a pigment, water, a little bit of gum arabic. The gum arabic is kind of the glue, but the honey, has many different purposes. It gives, first of all, it's antiseptic, it's natural, so we don't have to use any preservative, any chemical, because honey protect the paint. You know, since you use water, there's always a risk of bacteria or things. So to conserve the paint, so honey is great. Honey makes it easy to dissolve. So when you have the paint dries, or you use half pans, you know, like this, you know, a lot of people in France, this is very popular, you know, so you can when you go with your brush over it, you know, just like this, it dissolves very easily, and it contributes to a very luminosity, transparency, and conservative. So
Here, now do you make it in the pads and the tubes?
yes, so we make it here, you know, so this is the tube and this is the pans. So originally, and in France, the pans are much more popular because it's more concentrated, it's easy to travel with, and it's more economical at the end. In America, most people are used to tubes, so they rather buy tubes and then make their own pans. That's a choice. More and more people, so what they do usually when they travel, they use pans, and at their studio they use tubes.
Now,
So
if I put paint in a tube, put tube paint in there, and then it dries out, all I got to do is put water on it to reliquify.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And the honey makes it there. But I wanted to finish with something about that. So what happened in the 19th century, the Impressionists, or the people would go plein air painting, you know that word. In many cases, they couldn't finish their old oil paint, big canvas of oil paint on plein air because of the weather, because of the different things. So what they would do, watercolors was really like today, people would take photo, then you would do a little watercolor to have your composition and key colors and contrast. And then the watercolors was actually the sketch of the oil painting. And watercolor became very, very popular in France, sort of as a preparation for oil paint. And all of those Impressionists, we didn't know at the time, they were not even selling their watercolors because watercolor, well, there was not really a market for it. It's only later in the 20th century that now you know about watercolor from Monet, watercolor from Cézanne, and all this. So that's the story about watercolor. Here, let me show you. This is my wife Maureen's color charts. So we have 98 colors, and you know, it's we don't have time to go over all the colors, but we are very rich. I have a little story about watercolors. One of masters I'm going to mention is an Impressionist also at this time, but an American painter that actually very European. I think he grew up in Italy and then he studied in Paris. So he went to l'École des Beaux-Arts, and that's Sargent. Sargent came to Paris for the Beaux-Arts and then was introduced at the Sennelier store to a color called brown pink. Brown pink. You know? Brown pink. So brown pink, it is actually not pink at all. At the time, we saw Maureen just going by. Bye-bye. Maureen, she's the artist. You know, I asked her for her to demonstrate. But anyways, brown pink, it's actually pink in the old days, in the 19th century. It was not used to describe pink, the color. Pink was sort of meant yellow. So brown pink is not pink. And then he discovered that. And ever since, you can see in his writing, in his books and stuff, he refers often to the brown pink. And the brown pink, if you want, I can show you quickly.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of interesting colors. Again, it's an earth stone. So here, I'm going to do it like this. Up, I'm going to put some... and this, I'm using a rough paper because a lot of people don't know about rough.
What kind of brush is that?
This is an Isabelle scroll. And look, and the scroll is the finest hair in the world that allows you to keep a lot. You see how I don't need to put the brushes in the water. It carries all the water. This is my favorite brush.
I thought sable was the finest.
No. So the finest, so it depends what you call finest. So you see that color? So it's used a lot. If you look at Sargent, a lot of his background, and you can see reference of this color, brown pink. Since then, other, you know, we found that other companies have.
We lost your audio. Pierre, we lost your audio. I'm going to take him out, bring him back in, see if it matters. We can't hear you. He can't hear you. No. Okay, can you guys hear him? Because I can't hear him.
Hello?
Can't hear you. There you okay, you're back now.
Okay. I don't know what happened. My mic was on. So
well, no, the minute you started talking about your competitor, the sound went out. I guess you better not do that anymore.
So maybe it's your storm in Texas. So this is the difference. This is the two most famous fiber for brushes. This one is scroll. This one is sable, even Kolinsky sable. So scroll is the smallest, the finest hair. That's the hair that carries the most water. When you have a big reservoir, you see how fat it gets and still have a point, but it's soft. It's very soft, you know. The Kolinsky is not as soft, but is more springy. So you see when if you look at the tip, you know, the tip comes back all the time, you know. So for details, sable Kolinsky is better. What you use if you want to do washes and things, I recommend scroll.
And so the brand on those brushes is what?
So this one is Isabelle.
And what's the history of Isabelle?
So Isabelle is from Brittany, from 18. What's interesting, Isabelle was actually the painter that used to do miniature for Napoleon. You know, he would go in Napoleon.
Messonnier?
Huh?
Messonnier?
No, his name was Isabelle. Isabelle was
Isabelle was a painter.
Yeah, was a painter.
I see. Okay.
He did miniature, you know. So when he would go in the battlefield with Napoleon and do that miniature, and for that he needed some very special, very, very, very fine. So Isabelle was known for his very delicate fine, and he was made in the a little after Raphael, and then Raphael and Isabelle were always known to be the two best brushes in Europe, mainly in France, and so that's the difference, Isabelle and Raphael. All right. So, but now there's something, you can ask me more questions, but the one thing that I've had a lot of people, if we still have time, I would like to talk about Fabriano. Fabriano, because at the live, Watercolor, there was a lot of questions about paper. So Fabriano exists since 1264. It's probably the oldest brand that exists. So
yeah, you and I had
what?
You and I had dinner here in Austin, Texas, with the CEO of Fabriano. That's a fascinating story.
Yeah, so 1264. So they basically revolutionized the world by inventing paper the way we know it. I do a full lecture on the history of paper, and you'll find out that the paper, the way we know it, was invented at Fabriano. They invented surface sizing that allowed the possibility to paint on paper. Prior to that, paper was unusable for art. So, you know, in the 1264, imagine in the 13th century, Fabriano, that little town of 20,000 people, was like the hub, like the Silicon Valley of today, because with that invention, it was how now open up communication in the world, whether it's for love letter, romantic, whether it's religious with the Pope, whether it was politic, whether it was business. It changed the world, and that all started at Fabriano. So the sizing is key. So that's the invention of bringing that sizing that allows, when you paint, to have the right absorption. So the paint goes in the paper, but enough to stay on the surface, and then you can do scrubbing, you can go back and all that. So
Fabriano also has, I think, is the only line that's still in production of handmade paper other than a couple of small handmade paper companies. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So that's interesting that you bring that. Good memory. Today, Fabriano is the only company that have the three kind of paper making. There is handmade, and I can show you, don't have time. I have a beautiful video about how we make handmade paper exactly in the same place, the same way as 750 years ago. They have also a mold machine. Mold machine, that's what it's mainly used to do high quality, 100% cotton, mold made. That's what we use for Artistico. And you know, our French counterpart use that. There's only three companies who knows how to do paper like Artistico. And then we have machine made. It's called also Fourdenier, which is the machine. So yes, Fabriano is the only one who makes the three technique.
So if you want the handmade paper, is that called Artistico?
No. Artistico is the mold made. Mold made is kind of a mechanical way to do handmade paper.
Okay.
That's the most affordable. The handmade paper is called esportazione. It's called esportazione. No, exportation. It's very expensive, but it's called exportation because we were the first we used to export it to England. When the English invented watercolor, the late 18th century, Fabriano was providing the paper. That's why it's called exportation, because it was the beginning of exporting paper.
So we're down to about our last 3 or 4 minutes. So you're running out of time. What else you got to show us?
Well, there's oil pastel, pastels, oil stick. You know, there's so much to show in 2 minutes. I don't know. You know, you were asking me about gouache. So I talk about another brand because you mentioned about gouache. Gouache from Lascaux is the best gouache on the market. Lascaux, Lascaux, like the cave. It's not very known. It's not many people knows it. It's not available everywhere, but you can find it online. Lascaux, like the cave, because it's an archival company. They are mainly making products for the conservation, for the museums, but they have the best gouache, in my opinion, in the world. So Lascaux gouache, I could demonstrate it, but we don't have time. So actually, it's
go ahead. You can take 2 minutes.
Okay. So here I will.
So our guest today is Pierre Guidetti from Sennelier, and he's a distributor actually, and has a number of different products. You can get the products through most art stores, or the specific things mentioned. If it's not your store, you can get it online through a big retailer online, and there are lots of them. So maybe Pierre can tell you where his stuff can all be found.
Yeah. So just to clarify, and it's okay, you know a lot of people. So just to clarify, Pierre, I'm the co-founder of the company Savoir Faire with my wife. And Savoir Faire, we started a company. I dropped out of school to do that. And what we do, we created a portfolio of what we believe to be the best brand in Europe, from Europe, with the most legacy, ethics, and quality. So we have Sennelier for colors, Fabriano for paper, Raphael and Isabelle for brushes, and Cretacolor. We don't have time today to talk about that, but Cretacolor is from Austria, Vienna, who was the inventor of the graphite lead. So each of the brands that I represent are amazing stories. Sennelier, that's why it's nice. Eric refers me from Sennelier because Sennelier is like my family. Dominique Sennelier was my mentor. He taught me everything, and I'm considered family. And I represent the Sennelier family all over the world. And like I said, so that's why. But
okay, so which online retailer has all the stuff you've mentioned today?
So basically all the major online. So you could go to, from Blick to Jerry's to Cheap Joe's to Hyatt, most of those. But I'd like to support the brick and mortar. So if you have a good store that you like, ask them, because I know online, especially with the pandemic, the e-com has grown so fast, but I really would like to help the brick and mortar, because that's the best way.
Whenever possible, I go to the store instead of ordering online, just because I want to help them out. Okay, so you've got about a minute to demonstrate some gouache, and then we're going to cut you loose.
All right.
All right.
So here, so this is, so the gouache was actually, look how it's very matte, very opaque, and he gives, that's the origin. So it's like the sister or the brother of watercolor. Basically a gouache, it's basically an opaque watercolor, or watercolor, it's a transparent gouache. But gouache was used mainly in design, in graphic, in illustration. And then
and a lot of people are using it now for plein air painting because you can get a very similar feel to oil. Larry Moore demonstrated it on Watercolor Live. And we've had, if you go back, you want to see the show, we had John Burton demonstrating it in gouache.
So gouache, so just to finish with gouache, so gouache was popular for illustration, for commercial art, and was never really used a lot for fine art. But recently, as you said, the last 10 years, gouache is becoming very popular, also because the Watercolor Society have accepted gouache in their technique. Before, and there's still some, you can only use transparent watercolor. But now it's more inclusive, and I think gouache is exploding. Okay,
I'm going to put you on the spot. This was not planned. You're going to hate me. You're either going to hate me or you're going to love me. You showed something today that you would like to give away, and we will give it away live. In other words, we'll just randomly go through the comments and give it away live. What would you like to give it away? You'll have to mail it and you'll have to provide it. What would you like to give away?
Well, you know, there's so many options. A special brush, maybe the brush is the easiest.
Okay.
You know, maybe a nice Paris Classic, because I know you liked it.
Okay. All right.
Is that
we're
good?
Give away a Paris Classic. All right. Here's how we're going to do it. You guys, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to put a comment in, and then I'm going to go through the comments, and Pierre's going to tell me when to stop. And then we're going to do that. This is only on the live show. If you're watching the replay, sorry. You can still win the Plein Air subscription, Plein Air magazine subscription on the replay. Okay, make sure you get your names in. And you're going to give away the copper top brush made by Raphael.
Yes, the Paris Classic, the Max Ginsberg, and the Renoir and Monet's brush. How's that?
All right. I'm just give you another second here. Pierre, while people are putting things in the comments, do you have any final comments for everybody?
Yes, of course. So I want to tell you that, first of all, I want to tell you that, if I may say it, I do a live on Friday, which you can call from our Instagram, Art Savoir Faire, A-R-T Savoir Faire. And the reason of this live, it's not commercial, it's to promote the arts, because during the pandemic, we found that art has been very, very good for you and for the world. So we've been preaching, promoting the arts. Art is our savior. So please continue to paint, share your painting, share the art supplies. I've been giving a lot of art supplies to a lot of under-service kids and all that. Art is good for you. So please use art on those hard times. Art will be good for the world. So that's
okay, good. Quote. And what time is that on Fridays?
On Fridays is on 2 p.m. Western or 5 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So I'm going to go into the comments, and I'm just going to start scrolling, and then you tell me when to go, and then you tell me when to stop.
Go.
All right. All right.
Go. Paint.
Okay. That's stop. That means stop.
Yes.
Okay. The winner is Laureline Law. Laureline Law. So Laureline, you're going to have to reach out to me on Facebook Messenger, and then I'll send the message with your address and everything to Pierre so that you can get the copper top brush. All right, Pierre, that's very generous of you. Thank you very much. Sorry to put you on the spot. We didn't plan that.
No, but it's okay. We've done that before.
Yeah.
You know? And
well, Pierre, thank you so much for all you do for the arts. You know, you're a great historian. You're a great supporter of the arts. You've brought in, you and your wife started this company to bring products into America that we otherwise wouldn't have had. And you have just been a huge proponent of the arts. And we want to just say thank you. I hope everybody will give thumbs up and applause to Pierre. The brands, real quickly, just go through the names of the brands one more time. Okay. that you mentioned. Okay, so the brands.
The main one, Sennelier, colors, Fabriano papers, Raphael and Isabelle brushes, Cretacolor pencils, and then we have Lascaux acrylics, and then other thing, Lamali Awagami. But those are the core. And now we have also markers called Edding, but not many of you are using markers or technical pen.
Oh, you never know. I mean, these people are using everything. So anyway, Pierre, thank you so much for being on today. And thank you guys for watching. I know this is a little diversion from what we normally do, but it seems like you stuck around. I would like to make a couple announcements real quickly before once Pierre is gone. So hang with me for a second. Pierre,
okay, go paint.
And thank you so much, by the way, for sponsoring Watercolor Live and Plein Air Live and Realism Live. And we're looking forward to having you back for some other things. I want to tell people that in the comments, if at the end of the day, after the replays, if I count at least 300 people who say, yes, they're interested in Pastel Live, I'll put it in front of my board and see if they're willing to do it. But I got to have a minimum of 300 just to even think about it, because of that'll cover some of the cost. All right. Pierre, thank you so much. All right. My name is Eric Rhoads. I'm publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur in Plein Air Magazine. A couple of things for you. First off, we're here every day at 12 noon. We do it. We've done it 329 days now since the pandemic started. We want to be here to kind of keep you upbeat and feeling good. We also, every day at 3 p.m., we're giving you an art tutorial. Today's art tutorial is Ryan Brown painting classic portraits. He's going to teach you how he did this painting. And that'll be on today at 3 p.m. And you'll get a chance to see this video that we produced, part of that video. Tomorrow's guest is going to be Susie Heyer. And you're going to get a chance to see how Susie paints. And the last but not least is a couple of things. I'm going to play two things for you. And if you'll just hang there and watch them, I think you'll find them fascinating.
Are you an artist who's trying to get to the next level? Learning to paint can be frustrating. And we've met artists who have attended lots of workshops and watched lots of videos, but feel they do not make fast enough progress. Don't feel badly. It's not you. You see, scientists have recently discovered that learning itself is a science. To learn better, instructors need to employ these new scientific discoveries. It turns out that the way you present information helps you retain more. The methods of teaching help things sink in. So instead of retaining 5 to 10%, you retain much more. Now the world has turned to Zoom teaching, which sometimes makes learning harder, thus compounding the problem of learning. At Streamline, we decided we needed to reinvent how we do things. So we studied these scientific learning methods. We interviewed top experts on learning, and we developed a system to help you learn better, faster, while retaining more. Introducing SOAR. Streamline Online Artist Revitalization. Our goal is to make online learning better and help you achieve rapid transformation. Best of all, it won't feel scientific. In fact, great teachers use these techniques and you don't even realize they're being used. Yet you tell yourself, that's a great teacher. And as you start painting, you realize just how much you retained. As a result, you'll transform your painting and you'll do it faster. And the more you practice, the more ideas will positively impact your painting. You'll be painting better. You'll feel less frustrated. You'll retain more. You'll make faster progress. And you'll be much more satisfied with your painting. Streamline is introducing a series of SOAR workshops featuring top artists who'll be employing these learning techniques. These workshops will not only make you stronger, faster, they will also have new workshop features, like the ability to invest in a one-day pass, and private Facebook pages to communicate with the instructor and fellow students. And there are even follow-up sessions for 3 months following the workshop to reinforce certain concepts. Watch your email for upcoming SOAR workshops from Streamline.
The first SOAR workshop we're going to do is going to be the great Bill Davidson. It's a 4-day online workshop. Go to soarworkshops.com to check it out. I was going to play something else, but I don't want to keep you around, so we'll play it some other time. Thanks again to Pierre Guidetti from Sennelier and Savoir Faire. It was really informative. I want to thank you for being here. Remind you that we have a free gift for you if you are new to us today. We have a free 2-hour video for you, 97 tips, 97 amazing painting secrets. And we're going to take this off the market soon because we've got something new coming out. So grab it. Also want to tell you that our plein air convention is now officially canceled for this year. We cannot do it and feel like we can do it safely. So instead, we're going to be doing plein air live. And we have a deadline on the 28th of February to get the lowest price. It's still going to be a low price, but sign up by February 28th to get the lowest, and that's Plein Air Live. I'd like to ask you to follow me. My name is Eric Rhoads. Just go over to Instagram and follow me. That would be really terrific. And thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, and we will see you every day at 12 noon.